for our Race and Social Justice Initiative. I will say this, the Denver Opportunity Index is part of the mayor's equity platform. And some of the things that I want to point out, it's not a comprehensive list, but where we're putting this new philosophical change into action is that we have pretrial now 24/7. Work back to their families. It still holds them accountable for the crimes, but it has to be much more fair than it has been. We've made significant improvement. Quite frankly, there's more improvement needs to come. Our great outreach workers, how do we address some of the changing needs of our young people in coordinating with the police department? Here's two that we did, I believe, at the end of last year. That's pretty significant to meet our goals of assisting individuals that are struggling, and that's waiving our inmate fee and our pretrial monitoring fee. Our Chief Operating Officer, Laura Walker, tells me that since, I think it's December through August the 31st, this has affected, just the inmate waiver fee has affected 24,000 citizens. That's about $720,000 we've invested in their lives. For the pretrial monitoring fee waiver, that has affected about 2,000. That has affected about 2,000, a little bit over 2,100, and that's about $1.4 million in charges that we are now investing in their lives. Our philosophy is here, especially in the third pillar of those left behind. Is it fair to hand someone a bill when we're telling? And that's why we waive these fees. A couple partnerships that we're pretty excited about with the police department. We partnered with the We Don't Waste partnership, providing non-perishable food and police cars. That was announced on August the 23rd. Just a selected group of police vehicles. We're going to see how that works. We would like to expand that over time, not just with We Don't Waste partnership, but with churches and faith-based organizations and nonprofits. Far too often our first responders arrive in a home, they do the work that they have to do, and they realize that someone's hungry. Not only will they get food, they will also get access to phone numbers that will give them people that could potentially give them food long term. In the next few weeks, we will have a database that our employees and citizens will be able to tap into to see what type of services are nearby for anything from food, dependency issues, to also mental health issues. So you can look for that in the next few weeks. The next one is a staff volunteer policy. Why this is important is we wanted to have a volunteer policy in place exactly for what we're doing with the We Don't Waste partnership. The We Don't Waste partnership continues to work well under Chief Hazen's leadership. That organization is going to need volunteers to start helping put bags together to get that food ready. We want to make sure that our employees, all 4,400 of them, have the opportunity at least 8 hours a year to volunteer in their communities. This is important for two reasons. Number one, there's some very good organizations that need the help. They provide great services working in partnership with us. And number two, it also improves the knowledge of our work base. They start understanding what people are dealing with. And when they understand that, they can make better decisions in their roles, whether it's an executive role or an operational role. Also, Volunteers of America came to us after seeing the data. They are taking individuals straight from jail into housing, into jobs, and providing services. Our goal is through numerous partnerships that we have with Michael Sapp's leadership, with the Denver Opportunity Index, and talking to Sheriff Hazen, if we can start moving people out of jail into some type of help, the recidivism rate drops. If we can affect 100 people's lives, we can shut down an entire pod within our jail system, which would be extremely important. In the ballpark initiative, where you're looking at numbers this morning, we believe we've made over 20,000 runs in the ballpark area, most of those are shelters. We are hiring a contract employee that's going to be there as a co-responder to deal with these shelters every day. We think in the long run it'll reduce the amount of time that our firefighters and police have to stay there, but also will enhance greatly the quality of care that not receiving at this time. That's just a few of the items that we're doing with the Denver Opportunity Index throughout the Department of Public Safety. I'm going to ask our Chief Operating Officer, Laura Walker, to come up and go over some of the metrics and some of the budgets for some of our smaller departments. Lauren?
Thank you, Executive Director Ray. I'm Laura Walker, Chief Operating Officer for the Department of Safety. And so I will be reviewing some key strategic metrics for our civilian agencies. So what we really look at with 911 is our emergency call response time. So NFP standards that for 95% of all calls should be answered in 15 seconds or less, and 99% of all calls should be answered in 40 seconds or less. So we are almost meeting that with our 911 emergency call takers. We also look at the pretrial average daily population. So we are anticipating that our pretrial population, that's going up by about 17% since 2017. And this is really important in that our jail population has gone down on average this year about 8.45%. So we really believe that the more people we can get onto pretrial services and then we keep them out of jail and we get them the right services that they need. So our budget expansions for 2020. So the first one is a continuation of our pretrial 24/7 staffing. So this adds 5 positions to staff pretrial services so we can release inmates through the nights. Previously, we were operating about 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And so now we are 24/7. So this allows us to release inmates at all hours. And this will allow us to meet the Senate Bill 191 state mandates, where we have to release inmates within 4 hours or less. So for the first 6 months of the year, we've released about 4,000 releases to pretrial. About 45% of those releases occurred over the night hours. So you can see it's really imperative that we do continue to support this program, especially to meet the state mandates. The next expansion request was an extension of the grid outreach workers. So this is an extension of 4 outreach workers through 2020. A preliminary pilot showed the outreach program was effective in reducing recidivism rates, reducing the individuals, the level of gang embeddedness, and improving attitudes and employment opportunities. Additionally, in 2019, the UC Boulder received a $700,000 grant to continue a 3-year analysis regarding the effectiveness of grid. The third request is background investigators to support our 911 and DSD academies. The total cost is based upon the number of recruits anticipated. Our reduction proposals. The first one is just a transfer of funds of about $900,000 to our 911 Emergency Communications Trust Fund. And we are anticipating that the trust fund will be able to sustain this transfer of a one-time $900,000. The other 2 reductions, we are anticipating that we can absorb them within our current appropriation. Just a brief overview of our 911 Emergency Communications Trust Fund. So this is set by state statute, and just last year, effective January 1st of 2019, Council, along with the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, we did raise the surcharge rate from 70 cents up to $1.20 per line, and that was set by city ordinance. And so, per state statute, the trust fund does cover 911 operating expenses, including FTE, services, and capital needs. So in this prior year, we moved into the new facility. We also did the phone and the phone upgrade as well. So a lot of those are allowable expenses under the 911 trust fund. And we consistently monitor in partnership with BMO to ensure the sustainability of the fund. And here's just an overall, just a summary of all of our expenses and revenues. So with that, I'll to Chief Hazen.
And as the chief is coming up, I'll welcome council members Flynn, Hines, Clark, Ortega, and Kinich to the table. We are almost at full strength. Chief Hazen.
Councilman, thank you much. We appreciate it. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to explain our 2020 budget submission. We want to start with our mission statement as well. This is built around preventing crime and treating people with respect and dignity. Our goal is to expand our social justice initiatives by addressing the underlying social harms in our community with the stated goal of being the safest, most equitable city in America. This is all built on our strategic plan. Many of you have seen this. Moving from left to right, this is the pillars that were built on the foundation of preventing crime and treating people with respect and dignity. How we're going to do that is the reduction of social harms. The social harms include mental health, substance abuse, fear of crime, and multimodal transportation. To do this, we're implementing the precision policing model. The precision policing model has three components. There's a geographical, which focuses on the 78 of Denver. There is the innovation side. We can talk about some of the successes, including our domestic violence prevention program, as well as a technology side and enhancing technology to keep our community safe. Moving across, we have our fourth pillar, which is taking care of the people who take care of the people. Our officers are exposed to vicarious trauma every single day, and it is critical that our workforce that engages with the community has the support that they need in order to meet these challenges. And last, there is our long-term approach of putting the public and public safety that we believe will be very successful in reducing overall crime. Race and social justice initiatives. First on there is community connections. We have some partnerships with the city. My Denver Academy was a big part of that. This is outreach to newcomers in our communities, immigrants and refugees, to give them what the services that the city of Denver provides. We've had multiple graduations, and we continue to expand on this. Really, the community impact is engaging with historically marginalized communities. Try to give them some support, particularly around those interactions with law enforcement. We want to build culturally responsive relationships in order to foster and improve our communications and interactions with the community. Next on this is our citywide impact team. We thought this was going to be pretty good. It is far better than what we've expected. Essentially, this is timely follow-up to critical incidents. It's dealing with the trauma that a neighborhood experiences when there's high levels of violence. It's referred to as disempowerment of a community. We want to get that power back. We want to reduce the fear, as well as address repeated calls for service to specific locations. Again, focusing on historically marginalized communities. Our outreach, we have two liaison officers, actually high-ranking officers within the Denver Police Department that assist us with our LGBTQ outreach. This provides not only that community outreach and engagement, but also officer training. We need to make sure that we know and understand and utilize the appropriate pronouns, the cultural sensitivities, as well as our ability to expand our Safe Places initiative. One of the liaison officers actually works out of the chief's office. This is how important it is to us. It increases awareness, encourages reporting, particularly around hate crimes. And we can talk about that at the next bullet point. Bias motivated unit. We have demonstrated here by the recent creation of a bias-motivated unit of how important it is for us to address yet again this historically marginalized community, but providing them with the support that they need when they're victims of crime. It's a three-pronged approach. We have a prevention side of it, the detailed investigation, separating the investigative units, having collateral duties, but making it very intentional so that way folks that are victims of these types of crime get a full, complete, and thorough investigation. And then there's a third prong. Oftentimes, after a bias-motivated crime, it's not just that particular incident that is impacted, it's the greater community, the neighborhood in which this takes place, and that's where our initiative with citywide impact goes door to door, directly connecting folks to resources, mental health resources and other services, so that way we can heal from these types of crimes. Bridging the Gap, Kids and Cops, this is a nationally recognized program. This is a partnership with the Office of Independent Monitor. Hundreds of officers have been trained in this, nearly 2,000 young people as well. That increases our ability to communicate and interact with young people and making some positive changes. We have a lot of race and social justice initiatives. Our camp postcard, we expanded that to actually two different versions, or two different camps taking underprivileged, underserved youth up into the mountains. Very successful. Just a couple of days ago, we announced our Women's Recruiting Academy. Chief Archer and the team are hosting a very specific recruiting event for women in our community, October 4th and 5th, and we believe that will help us in our long-term efforts to recruit and retain high-quality officers. Just last week, you heard our announcement about adding resources to the Traffic Operations Bureau. The chart to my left shows an increase in crime satisfaction from the community. This is a national community survey that started in 2016, and we're seeing some positive results from that, including traffic enforcement. We see that it's stated in our strategic plan, multimodal transportation. Everybody in this city deserves to get from point A to point B safely, whether that is in a vehicle, on foot, on a bicycle, or on a scooter. And we're demonstrating that by resourcing the priorities, including where our enforcement efforts are taking place. So we are using data where the serious bodily injury accidents as well as fatals have occurred. We've made some progress. It wasn't that long ago when we were talking about South Federal Boulevard and the challenges that we faced down there. Collaboratively with Parks and Rec, with our community partners, Vision Zero, and the police department, we've made significant progress there. We're again moving with the data to make sure that we're addressing these in a timely way, and that's what the map to the right indicates. Challenges, we actually see about a 3% increase in calls for service. This is community calls for service, 911 or non-emergency calls. You can see that we're actually holding steady or having some decreases in certain crime types here. On that line that slashes through the graph on the right is an indication of Denver's growing population. And this defines it a little bit more clearly. So the orange bar graph, that's Denver's population over the last 10 years, 22% increase. The police department, safety department, we provide safety services for DIA, and the DEN passengers in the last 10 years have increased dramatically. it's great that our city core downtown is growing with additional employees, 52% increase, influx of daytime population into the city core to come to work. Overnight visitors, this is travelers to our city, tourists to our city, a dramatic increase, 58% increase. And then downtown residential population, so folks are choosing to live downtown, and that has grown significantly. That little tiny badge off to the right, that indicates that the police department has grown by 14% over that same 10-year period. What this budget offers, a year ago we stood here and we were talking about specific carve-outs. So we talked about the domestic violence prevention program, and we asked for 3 investigators for us to take a different approach to domestic violence. And since we've been able to do that, our total domestic violence cases are down over 7%. This is huge because year over year in a growing city, we saw increases. We saw increases because this impacts every race, gender, sexual orientation, religion. It increases with population. And by doing this outreach model, it aligns with our prevention and our strategic plan. So we finally saw a decrease, and we are making good on our promises to address domestic violence. A year ago, we asked for additional funding to provide additional training for use of force. And through August, our use of force incidents are down 21%. And we also asked for additional resources for our gang outreach model. Again, trying to prevent gang violence from occurring in the first place, trying to connect people to additional resources. We actually have a significant decrease, a 9% decrease in total gang-related incidents. While we're on this slide, I do want to share that we are seeing an increase in mental health related calls. So piggybacks on what Executive Director Riggs had talked about, us taking a different approach to address individuals. So a 17% increase in mental health related calls this year alone. That's significant. I also want to talk about our total arrests. It speaks to our philosophical approach. The total arrests in Denver are down 12%. Total arrests are down 12%, and I just told you that crime is down or flat in other areas. How is that possible? Nearly 5,000 fewer people actually taken to the DDC as a result of it. It directly aligns with the Denver Opportunity Index and what we're trying to accomplish, and that is providing resources and services to our most vulnerable populations, not just locking up individuals who may be addicted to substances and actually connecting them with resources like the LEAD program, but primarily focusing on individuals that are preying on our most vulnerable populations, that are exploiting our most vulnerable populations. We've taken more guns off the street this year than previous years because we want to keep our community safe. We've seized more methamphetamine this year than any year in the past. And it's focusing in on those that are exploiting our vulnerable populations while providing services and outreach to our community. Councilman Flynn, is this your slide? Thank you. I'm proud of the progress that we've made here with high priority response times. Just a couple of years ago, we were over 14 minutes citywide on these high priority calls. When somebody dials 911, they expect, and they have a crisis or a police emergency, they expect a uniformed police officer to show up and resolve as quickly as possible. We've made a lot of progress, including looking inward and reallocating positions in headquarters spots and putting them back in patrol. Through the first 8 months of the year, we're actually at 11 minutes and 32 seconds
Our stated goal is to get below 10 minutes on response times. This expansion of the 40 permanent officers, this aligns with 35% of the time being available for officers to engage in crime prevention, the proactive efforts, and to respond in times of emergency in as quick response as possible, and we're making progress towards that. Bottom right-hand corner, we absolutely use data to point where the challenges are that we face. We see an increase in population in police districts 5 and police district 6. We are also seeing an increase in calls for service. So we utilize this type of information. It's a lot of data sets, the high priority calls, the number of hours on particular calls, the distance covered, accessibility, in order to ensure that we can get the appropriate number of resources in the particular areas. So the slide bottom right indicates the challenges that we're seeing in police districts 5 and 6. Next slide, you can see here, it's an extension of our 40 FTE expansion. This is essentially how we get there. This year alone, about 70 officers have retired or left the job. So that's why you have to hire a lot more in order to get to that effective strength for us to get. And there's a slide here in a second that will show a little bit more. But in order to get to that 40 FTE expansion, next year we need 2 basic classes, 50, as well as 1 lateral class at 34. And those are the costs associated. Here's the chart that explains a little bit more with authorized strength and effective strength and actual strength. So again, to meet those needs, challenges that we face, it's all based on when the academy classes start. The academy is a 6-month process. Often we lose a handful of officers in the training phase at the academy. Then they began the field training program, and that takes an additional 16 weeks or 4 months, and we lose officers there. So working with budget management, that is how we are able to identify exactly how many officers that we need, plan for that, address that in the academies. That way we are meeting those authorized strength numbers that you see in. One expenditure that we have in 2020, we talked about that philosophical approach. We talked about precision policing and technology. One of the technological aspects that assists us in doing our job and keeping the community safe is ShotSpotter. There's an expansion for the downtown coverage area. It's greater than just the city core. It also includes Civic Center Park and goes east. I won't give the exact boundaries. However, this is an important tool. We've got examples this year alone where people don't report gunfire. We have a high level of violence call where an individual was shot and nobody called the police. It was only because of the technology that we were able to get there quickly, and then find justice for the victim and the victim's family by holding the person accountable. This is an example where technology assists us. Again, looking at public-private partnerships, you see the expenditure of $95,000 there, but you also see a revenue offset. We have community partners that recognize the value of this technology and have contributed to assist us in moving forward with expanding the ShotSpotter program. Other budget impacts, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Traffic safety is a major priority, not only for the police department, but the entire safety department, and I've heard it today from the mayor as well. We need to make sure that we are resourcing appropriately. These are some of the offsets. These are conservative numbers because we are looking to slow people down if they're driving too fast. And if that necessitates or if a warning does that instead of a citation, we're trying to change behavior. So we're not, these are the low estimates of anticipated revenue that are just based on the number of officers that were assigned to traffic operations prior, multiplied by the amount of resources that are coming in. That's the first two bullet points. We also have additional revenue coming in. The Tennyson Center for Children has approached us about, again, fostering and building those stronger relationships. These are young people that have been exposed to trauma and have historically distrust for law enforcement. Often they become runaways and have a negative impact on the community by doing face-to-face interactions. By having an officer there, we're actually building relationships. We have strong relationships as a result of it, and partnering and collaborating with the Tennyson Center so far has been extremely effective for us, and we'll continue. That's the offset there. We had a captain that recently resigned. We are not planning, or excuse me, he didn't resign, retired, 30+ years of exemplary service to our community. But we're not replacing captains, so there's an increase in revenue by not replacing that position. We can get the work done through a lieutenant. And then collective bargaining agreement, there's some additional costs associated that hit in 2020 as a result of the collective bargaining agreement. A couple of reductions. Temporary reducing the outsourcing of uplifting police cars. We're doing this in-house, so there should be no impact. It shouldn't hurt our ability to get vehicles that officers need or have to be ready to go. Temporary freezing, a couple of positions, associate accountant, management analyst, and an administrative position. And then also some maintenance contracts for the crime lab. Holding off on those gives us a little bit of savings there as well. This is what it looks like with the bar graphs and the total number of employees. And with that, I'd love to call up the fire chief.
Perhaps this would be a good time to break for some questions, if you don't mind. First, I'll recognize Councilwoman Sinabaka to the table. Thank you. We are managing that together. And I've got Black Ortega, Torres, Hines, and Sawyer in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you for having more resources for traffic operations. I think it's one of the top concerns for residents of Denver are the amount of traffic and people speeding and not having stop signs and things like that. So thank you for that. And then I have a couple of questions, probably for you, Chief Payton, and then maybe for Laura Walker. So, the expenditures for the basic academies for 50 recruits, it's one time, but what is it going to be next year? I mean, how do you stay on top of this, and what do you estimate will be year over year? It seems like this year's an extraordinary year. Will it always be at that high level, or will it ratchet down a little bit every year?
So we look at pending retirements, and we anticipate the total number of officers that we expect to leave in a given year. Next year, slightly lower than 2019, but 2021 actually bumps back up to 2019 numbers. But we look at this very closely. Human Resources assists us in identifying when the officers are going to be retiring, and we look at this actually multiple times a year. We meet with budget management in the winter, we meet with them in the spring, we work with Civil Service Commission to identify what that looks like and make sure that we have the resources to fill those gaps. And it needs that much attention, because if you think about it, right? Chief Archer, Chief Sonner, we're looking at recruit files as we speak. So about 80 officers have just gone through the civil service process, the interviews. They've been doing this for several months. This is for the November Academy. The Academy is 6 months long, followed by 4 months of field training. There's a lot that goes into being able to put an officer on the street and have them answer a 911 call and answer that call appropriately. So we have to stay on top of it and have that much detail in planning to ensure that we have the right number of officers. And we recognize the impact that the police department in particular has on the budget, and that's why we make sure that we really straddle that line, because we don't want a bloated, inflated budget as well. So a lot that goes into it. We're already looking at multiple years in advance.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then my other two quick questions, I think I can do, Laura. The pre-trial staffing on page 11 says that it's temporary. Why is that temporary?
So those positions are temporary because they were just extended for 1 year. And so they're limited positions for 2020.
Councilwoman, we actually, as part of the 2020 budget, where there were limited positions that were asked to be extended or flipped to permanent, across the board, if they were general fund positions, we extended them through 2020. We'll work through that. It was more of an economic decision than it was a program by program decision. So we'll have to evaluate where we are for 2021, and we'll relook at all the limited positions across the city.
Okay, so if this proves to be effective, it will likely be incorporated into the 2021 budget on a more permanent basis.
We will evaluate it based on our capacity and of course, the value of those positions.
Okay, great. And then my final question is page 15, the 911 emergency communication. So remind me that the surcharge, is that just for landlines or is that for cell phones?
That is for cell phones and landlines.
And is that staying steady? Is it going up? What is the status of that?
Dana Bobin, Director of
Dana Butler, 911 Director. That's staying steady at this point. It's always something that we'll keep an eye on, that if we have increased costs that would expand over the long term, we have to go before the PUC to get that type of increase and then come back to you all for legislative change. But we just put this change in effect. We hadn't changed from 70 cents in a number of years.
I remember that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ortega.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question is for Chief Payton. Thanks for the presentation. Under the Traffic Bureau, do we still have a hazmat unit that's part of the traffic unit, traffic ops?
So that's what was announced last Friday, was expanding those heavy vehicle enforcements. And I really appreciate your question. This is critical to us, particularly when we're talking about the highway expansion that's taking place. We have heavy vehicles that are now choosing to drive on our city streets. And some of these heavy vehicles need to be inspected, the brakes, the overweight, and we have added 3 officers, so 3 of that 9 are directly related to that. We believe that, particularly with the I-70 expansion, that we'll have more of these heavy vehicles in our Global area Swansea neighborhoods, and want to make sure that we have the resources available and focusing to keep our community safe. But we're proud to announce that. And then secondly, right, we just talked about the timing of these. We have priorities, and we're meeting those priorities to keep keep our community safe, but we do that in conjunction when officers graduate that field training program. So we recognize this need, earlier in the year, but Denver has 78 unique neighborhoods, and we can't take officers out of neighborhoods to then assign them to particular areas until those recruits graduate from the academy. So it's a complex set of data that we review in order to make sure that we're meeting those needs, and those types of expansions are done when recruits are newly put on the street in a solo capacity. That way we're not taking any officers from any of the neighborhoods and causing any kind of decline or depleting service.
So for the officers that are doing enforcement on the highway, oftentimes they encounter some of these heavy trucks that carry various types of hazardous materials.
Correct.
Do they have bunker gear in their vehicles so that, and have they gone through training like some of our fire officers have done the training down in Pueblo, knowing what they're coming upon, knowing how to read the placards, making sure they're not putting themselves at harm. So
Right.
just curious
We
about-
work closely with the fire department, incident management system with regards to that. There's a lot that goes into this highway unit. It's slightly different than the regular traffic operations officers. It's slightly different than regular officers. But yes, we work closely with the fire department in order to keep the officers safe that do that type of work.
So because sometimes they are the first responder, do they carry bunker gear? Have they raised that issue as a question?
No.
I know in the past they used to, we had a very specific unit, hazmat unit within the traffic ops. So anyway, just raising that as a concern that those officers' safety is important. Let me move on to my next question, and it's about the use of force training. Do we have 100% of our personnel trained now under the same methodology?
We do, including the chief of police and everybody on it.
That's great, thank you. I have one last question, this is for Riggs. This is about the public safety cadet program. And this is an ongoing conversation about the fact that we have a lot of kids that are not from Denver, and I don't know what kind of specific recruitment we do. Are we still paying 100% of the tuition for young people who come into our cadet program?
Right, I'm going to ask, and I'll see if Deputy Director Williams is here to speak, or Austin Hartman.
Okay, because I want to push that these should just be Denver kids. I mean, we've got outstanding kids in our Denver school system,
Yes.
and the fact that they're not all Denver kids is very concerning. And so, can you just kind of give some info on what that percentage looks like right now?
Sure. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Austin Hartman. I'm the cadet program manager. So currently, we have about 25% of our applicants come from Denver Public Schools. Out of that applicant pool of about 250 applicants, we tend to hire about 31% from Denver Public Schools. And currently, there are 54 cadets. 31% of those are from Denver Public Schools. So the rate at which we hire DPS students matches the current makeup of the cadet program.
But is there a reason why we're not just picking Denver kids versus kids from throughout the metro area? I mean, to pay for 4 years tuition for these kids, I think, there should be some concentrated effort to make sure that they're there.
Absolutely. So we do have a concerted effort to reach out to Denver Public Schools students. Just this year alone, I met with the Denver Public Schools Department of Safety, the entire staff of the DPS Department of Safety, with Chief Eaton as the chief of that unit. And I briefed all of the school resource officers on what the cadet program is. I gave them materials to hand out to all the DPS students that they interact with on a daily basis. Because oftentimes the students who are interested in public safety may not approach us, so the school resource officers are excellent tools for us to use if they've had those conversations on the side. I also work with Denver Public Schools Career Connect program that's led by Monica Schultz at DPS, and that is a career placement program that DPS has in place for students interested in certain industries. I've partnered with them 3 times in the past. Coming up here October 8th, I'm partnering with them again, and they will go through the DPS school system. They'll solicit interest in the cadet program, public safety, and then they'll actually bus 44 of the most interested students to a location of our choosing, which is the Denver Fire Academy this year. And at that point, those 44 students will walk them through what the cadet program is and see if they are interested. So I do partner twice a year with DPS Career Connect to try to gather interest from Denver Public School students. We also in October are hosting an orientation, which traditionally has had about 200 people from the community come and attend, many of whom are Denver Public School students and parents. And then last but not least, in November, I am going to the 8th grade DPS Career Fair at the Western Stock Show. That is going to host about 4,000 DPS 8th graders, getting the word out to them. So we do have a concerted effort to recruit primarily from DPS school students. Again, traditionally, historically, we've seen about 25% of the applicant rate overall from DPS.
Can you just tell me if that includes outreach to, we have a Lutheran school in Southwest Denver, we have a number of Catholic schools. Does it include other than just DPSU?
Yes, ma'am. So we have, within the cadet program, we have 7 cadets who actually function on a recruitment capacity. We have a committee, and they are each assigned a district. We actually map it according to how the 6 police districts are set up in Denver. So I've got 2 cadets in each district, and on a monthly basis, they'll go to 2 or 3 different locations, and they will recruit actively at those locations. They're not always Denver public schools, middle schools, or high schools. We've recruited at any number of different events, including community colleges, the 2 metro schools downtown. But primarily we do focus on recruitment from the pool of DPS students. We're just not seeing some of the return on that investment as far as how many actually end up applying to the cadet program, knowing that they have to commit to 4 years.
The only thing I would suggest is when you have recruitment opportunities coming up, when you have, a new class, if you will, of cadets that will come on, if you could let us know, we can help do some of that outreach through newsletters, through our contact with communities as well.
Absolutely. I would definitely appreciate help from council on getting the word out about our October 16th event. It's a Wednesday night at 7 p.m. That will be for the community. And then we also have, the application is actually opening in December of this year. It'll be open from December 1st to December 31st. So I'm happy to get flyers out, information out. I can come do briefings or community meetings on what the program is, what the benefits of the program.
Thank you.
That'd be very helpful. Thank you.
If I could just add one more thing, and I'm sorry, actually, the cadet program works under Chief of Staff Aileen Nix, and she also has HR. And one of the things that we're exploring now, I don't know if it'll come to fruition, but if anyone could help would be greatly appreciated. If we could find a magnet school within the school district, a school that would be willing to say, if you want to get involved in public safety, let's make it a magnet type school for people to go to that school to learn more about public safety. We would invest in that. We think that could help us in a lot of areas. It would help us with more people from Denver. It would help us with our diversity numbers. And I think it would be good for individuals that may not have that opportunity. So we're exploring that. We're looking at it through our HR and how we would develop that in partnerships as well.
Thank you.
And sir, I can add on that if you'd like. So just recently, I have been meeting with DPS and DSST schools. The DSST school that is most interested in this idea of having a 4-year pathway in high school, not just post-secondary like my program, but in high school, is DSST College View. Their focus is on career placement. They have 100% placement into college and careers after students graduate from that school. So they're very interested in this idea. And then again, I'm working with DPS Career Connect to identify the best school in the DPS system. Currently, North High School CEC, Middle College, they are interested in this idea as well. So I'm hoping to have something like this magnet school proposal finalized by the end of the year. And that again would allow some high school students to take part in a public safety track through high school, and then perhaps get seats into the cadet program. They could also be in the Denver Police Explorer program during that journey. But it's to get the idea into their minds a little bit earlier than what the cadet program does.
I appreciate those extra efforts. And then if you could just provide us information on the demographics of the students that are in the program right now.
Would you like me to do that right now?
If you have that?
I do.
While he's looking that up, I've got 7 more members in the queue. And
All right, so I have, would you like me to go ahead, sir?
you please.
Okay. So there are 54 cadets. They range in age from 17 to 26. Again, DPS origin is 31%, non-DPS origin 69%. Female is 41%, male 59%. Then the race ethnicity breakdown is white 46.3%, Hispanic 3%, Hispanic Latino 31.48%, Black 11.11%, Asian 5.56%, 2 or more races 3.7%, and Native American 1.85%. So as a whole, the cadet program has a higher diversity than the parity of Denver.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Welcome.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman McCarthy.
Can I just add that I agree. I think that getting people from North High School is a good idea. Actually, and I will point out our executive command staff, we have North High School, we have Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, and Lincoln represented in the Chiefs. So sorry, Councilman.
Did I not hear South High School?
No,
South High School.
We're just focused on North right now.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you so much. Question, Chief, since you're up there. The CBE grant, has it reached its limit, its end?
It has, and again, great program, horrible name. Community connections is really what we believe in, being able to serve our newcomers, the newcomers to our community, and this has been able, we're thankful that we got this grant because it was able to show us what's working, what's not working. We see tremendous value in being able to do this continued outreach, and that's what's taking place.
So I'm wondering if the staff person that was hired through that grant will be staying on the department?
Yes.
Okay, in the same capacity, community engagement?
Exactly.
Okay. I didn't get to see the other side of that grant, the mentoring piece. So if there's any information that you can send me just on the outcomes or.
Yeah, the focus was truly on outreach and building relationships, and that's what the grant accomplished.
Curious if there's interest from the department, the portion of that grant that DPD covered for the My Denver Academy was for translation and interpreting. Is there still interest in that partnership?
There is. As you know, we've made a lot of progress. There's a lot of work to go, and as we continue to get newcomers from all parts of the globe, we can't think that we just have a couple of different segments of groups figured out. We have newcomers that continue to explore our city and move to our city, and we need to continue to make sure that we have those language and translation services and outreach in order to help them.
Thank you. That's great to hear. The second question that I have, your investigation budget dropped by 53%. Is that being redistributed?
It is. prior to our administration, the police department was structured in an operations and a administrative role. There were 2 deputy chiefs, if you recall, previous, and we have streamlined that, so we have one deputy chief, Chief Barbara Archer, as well as 3 division chiefs, and so all of that movement is just restructuring essentially from operations. So you have a patrol division headed by Chief Thomas, you have investigations headed by Chief Montoya, and then you have an administrative division headed by Chief Son.
Okay. And then my final question for you, Chief, is the community-based crime reduction grant. I thought it was $1 million. It's listed as 104, 104,000 in the 2020 piece. Was the remainder reflected in the 2019 budget?
It's, so the grants, and Jean would be far better at explaining this. So you see a reduction in overall grants. That's because we haven't had some of the awards for 2020 in there. The community-based crime reduction in the Westwood neighborhood grants that we are extremely excited about. It's really doing some great things in that particular neighborhood, but that's the way that the grants are captured, based on what comes in and how it's distributed. If that answered the question, but at some point I would love to talk about CBCR and all the partnerships that we have here. This is we're doing this as a model. The plan is to do it here in Police District 4 and then expand clockwise. This really drills down into neighborhood issues, and it's directly aligned with the Denver Opportunity Index. It's more than just going into a neighborhood and to families and young people, providing additional opportunities for historically marginalized communities. And so far, it's meeting that mark and then some.
Okay. And I realize I have one more question for you. The police calls for service, do you keep mapped out by neighborhood?
We absolutely do, and that is what drives the resource allocation. So similar to what we've displayed here, police districts 5 and 6 are where we're seeing the greatest increase in calls for service, and that's what drives how we distribute the resources when they graduate the field training program.
Okay, thank you. And then one question for Laura. Just the graph that accompanied your grid outreach worker slide number 12. I wasn't understanding that. I'm wondering if you can clarify it and how it relates to the outreach.
Sure, and is Paul Callahan here? Paul, can you address that question? Paul is the grid director.
Good morning, council members. My name is Paul Callahan. I'm the director of the Gang Reduction Initiative in Denver. If I'm understanding the question correctly, it's how does that graph relate to the request of outreach workers?
Yes.
What the outreach workers do in a coordinated fashion with the multidisciplinary teams, with other partner agencies, is they focus on that top 10% of individuals that drive 90% of the violence. So it's an intensive amount of intervention, gang disengagement that's applied to that known population that's driving the violence. So if we can pull a few of those individuals away that are driving the violence, we'll see a reduction. And that graph shows, so we focus on those individuals that are highest risk to be involved either as perpetrators or victims of gang violence.
So ID'd as victim or perpetrator, that means pulled into your programming or identified by your outreach workers.
The graph up here, the numbers of who IDs a victim as a gang member or who IDs a perpetrator as a gang member is up to the Denver Police Department. What GRID does is we work with consortium of partners across the city who's involved in violence. We get referrals from a wide variety of organizations. For example, an individual whose brother is shot and killed, that individual is involved in gang culture that immediately puts him at high risk to be involved in violence, possibly retaliatory violence. So our team will immediately go out and intercede and start working with that family. So we don't put labels on anybody. We don't designate who's a gang member, who's not. we do take referrals from a large number of people in the community that say this person's at high risk.
Thank you, Councilman Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Apologies, I got caught in the Councilman Torres's question. So, I have my notes in front of me. Chief Payson, the additional officers that are assigned to traffic, are these cars only? Are they specifically vehicular traffic, or is there multimodal elements to that?
Yes, the answer is yes to each of those. So again, it's broken down. 3 of the 9 are specific to that highway unit. So they have a different set of equipment. You have to have scales and things to truly do those heavy vehicle inspections. The other 6 of the officers, there's a combination of motorcycle and car deployment. But again, this allows us to be more responsive. We discussed this in the press conference that if an accident occurs at a particular location, we will immediately deploy the resources to address that, looking at it in a rapid response approach with Vision Zero and Public Works to make sure that we're identifying those causal factors and addressing those. And this is for all aspects, whether it's a bicycle, whether it's a pedestrian who's walking on foot, whether it's a vehicle, that looking at those different factors and then asking that question, how could this be prevented? And then making those changes or adjustments in a collaborative approach.
Do you have enough vehicles for the officers that reassign to traffic, including specifically cars?
So budget management deserves a credit for this, Jessica Skibo in the back. So when we make those requests, so the 40 officers that we are requesting, if I can get to the slide, you'll see that this is specifically broken down with those needs. So we don't just ask for the body. There's a police radio and the equipment, uniforms that go with it, there's vehicles that go with it, and then there's a span of control. Additional officers, the requirement for additional investigations, for additional supervision with the field supervisors and trainers, the corporals and sergeants. So it's broken down, very intentional, so we can make sure that our requests meet the needs, that we don't get these brand new officers and say, hey, go out there and take care of heavy vehicle enforcement, but do it on foot. So budget management does a great job of helping us identify what those needs and challenges are and making sure that that equipment is there when the officers start, as well as there when they're ready to hit the street.
Thank you, and Chief, and for the budget managers for being forward-thinking in that regard. The 2 other questions, how can we, so you mentioned District 6, Police District 6 has a large increasing volume of calls. We're committed to the Mobility Action Plan, we're committed to Vision Zero. How can we support you as we move forward more with multimodal transit? We just passed a new ordinance with scooters. People are really frustrated because, that people don't magically know that scooters are now no longer allowed on the sidewalk. That's not your issue necessarily, but at some point, after we do some awareness, we'll want to do some enforcement as well, specifically with scooters. How can we support you in that, function in the future?
Councilman, great question.
Function in the future.
Councilman, great question, right? I think every single person in this room wants to reduce the single occupant vehicles that are driving on our roadways. And scooters are part of that. There's plenty of folks that are frustrated with the use of scooters, whether they be on the sidewalk, whether they be on the street. But if people are choosing to use a scooter to get around downtown instead of jumping in their vehicle, contributing to traffic, then that's a benefit. We are in the warning phase now. And it's very similar to an issue that we had just a couple of years ago with bicyclists. We had the same or similar amount of outrage from people on vehicles or people on foot of, hey, these bicyclists are running stop signs, they're running lights, they're on the sidewalk, similar types of challenges. So again, these complex problems, they deserve comprehensive approach. And here's where it kind of fits into that precision policing model. So yes, we are doing the warnings now, the educational component. But these companies, in order to access the scooter, you have to use your cell phone. And 2 of the 5 companies have been great on geofencing the areas around Coors Field and the 16th Street Mall, as well as putting warnings on the phones. This is something that we can do collectively of, if you want to do business here, then you need to make sure that these warnings and messages are part of the application that when you're accessing this. From our perspective, we encourage people to use multimodal transportation, including scooters. We want to make sure that if people choose that form of transportation, that they can do it safely and that they're not causing harm to other folks as well. And the educational component, just like we've made a lot of progress with bicycles, is what we're hoping to accomplish with the scooter side of things.
All right, that's a good point. And Denver City Council District 10, also known as Denver's Perfect 10, has a disproportionate amount of non-car transit. So, and I wanted to continue, but everyone should have. I think you mentioned this. Everyone should have the freedom to get from A to B and feel safe while doing it. The final question that I have is about Caring for Denver. So how can we support you as those funds and infrastructure come online? How can we make you most effective? Certainly you're often a first responder, and often, sometimes those incidents are addiction or mental health related. You have and your team are trained for a certain set of items. I don't think that you're necessarily for subject matter expertise is either of those. So we want to make sure that we provide you with the resources you can to do your job, and also to make sure that we care for Denver.
We really appreciate the support. Thank you for bringing up this topic. The voters, the people of Denver deserve credit. It shows what kind of hearts that our community has, the big hearts of wanting to do better. You see that that's part of our strategic plan, reducing mental health and substance abuse. Oftentimes, these are causal factors both on the victimization of vulnerable populations, and we think if we can reduce that, then we can create a safer, more equitable community. We are working closely with the board for Caring for Denver. We're working, several city council members are also part of some of the initiatives that we're taking a look at. We currently have 16 mental health clinicians. It's an amazing program. They're worth their weight in gold and then some. We plan on expanding that. Again, this is directly aligned with what Executive Director Riggs talks about with the Denver Opportunity Index and making sure that we can do that outreach. I mean, a couple of years ago, who would have ever thought that police officers would be carrying non-perishable foods in their vehicles to help individuals who are hungry? So we've made some progress. We've made much progress, but there's still plenty of work to do. And we believe that this initiative
Vote's not the issue.
will assist us greatly. And we are working on a regular basis, both internally and externally, with the mayor's administration on how to best utilize those incoming resources to maximize our ability to help our vulnerable populations.
And if you have specific ideas on how we can help individually or as a body, please let us know. And thank you, Chief, for all you do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Sawyer.
Thank you, Mr. And I know this is getting really long, so I had a couple of questions, and I'm going to wrap them kind of all into one for you, because I think they sort of all get to the same point, which is that I know we all need to tighten our belts. I know we are concerned about, budget, and softening, sales tax numbers and revenue and all of that kind of stuff. But I want to also make sure, particularly when it comes to public safety, that we are not being penny wise and pound foolish, right? So I just want to, my questions were kind of around the decisions that are being made for this year, the implications that they're going to have for the coming years, and just making sure that those decisions are not going to negatively affect or undermine our public safety goals moving forward, even though they may, in the short term, cut the budget and be the smart thing for us to do. So, things like, for example, not replacing the captains and having lieutenants do the work, which was something that you had mentioned, or in terms of the recruiting classes, you doing less lateral hires and more recruiting classes, even though lateral hires cost less and get on the street faster. So can you just kind of explain in terms of those kinds of things? I just, like I said, want to make sure that we're taking the long view here.
So the police department, the safety department, we are data driven. And to your point, we will never ask for one officer more than what we need. And we're not going to be shy about asking for the officers that we do need. And that's why we can back it up based on the data that we see. We work very closely with the mayor and BMO to make sure that we resource safety in this city appropriately. We do look at this and laterals and basic officers. There's trade-offs to both of those. And this budget request, that's exactly what we asked for. We didn't ask for more laterals than basics. We asked for 34 laterals and 50, two classes of 50 basics. And that's directly in line with our staffing plan to make sure that we can meet those needs. So BMO, the mayor's office, were directly aligned in our request to make sure that, that's our commitment to you. We will never ask for one officer more than we need. We won't be shy about asking for the resources that we absolutely need. We use data to indicate what those requests are.
Great, thank you. And just so, it's out there, I think that if for some reason there is a point where it is found that this is not a place where we can save some money, we need to have that discussion, and it should remain on the table, because I don't think that the people of Denver think that public safety is something that we can negotiate on at all. So thank you very much for your willingness to be here and do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Flynn.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Chief, on slide 29, on ShotSpotter, I'm concerned with the substantial increase in the number of detections that don't have a 911 call associated with it. And I hope that that's not because people think that the ShotSpotter is substituting for their calls. Do you have a reason or a finding that accounts for that?
So we message this right from the get-go. We want to make sure, and that's communicated clearly, that ShotSpotter is not a substitute for dialing 911. The calibrations on this really separate the difference between what is fireworks and what is gunshots. As far as a data-driven answer, I could not explain why that percentage has grown. Growing cities, sometimes there's, well, it's just how things are around here, and we want to make sure that doesn't occur. We want people, if they are witnesses to any type of crime, whether that's a crime in progress and or a crime that has occurred in the past, to let us know, give us an opportunity to look into it, and then try to address it.
The only calls I get about ShotSpotter are from people wondering when it can be expanded to their neighborhoods. What are the odds that we'll be able to expand this, now that we're expanding it into downtown, how about into some of the other neighborhoods?
We use data to drive that, and we have...
That's why I want...
Okay, no, exactly. And we have identified 3 additional areas that, as resources become available, that we should look at. So great question, right? And I don't mind saying this, thanks for putting me on the spot. I don't know the right answer answer, will you put me in the timeout?
We'll meet over there later.
Okay. What I will say is, throughout Denver's 78 neighborhoods, we have a pretty good substantial coverage of ShotSpotter. And we don't, advertise where those are except for downtown Denver. We want people to know that we are investing in the technology that keeps people safe when they and visit or go to restaurants, engage in activities downtown. We want folks to know that was part of that public-private partnership in order to publicly say where ShotSpotter is. But historically, we want to make sure that we don't tell folks or telegraph where that technology exists in the neighborhoods.
One last question. On 60% of hits with the ballistic information network where casings were found, I had a constituent from Sampson Gulch whose security camera picked up 10 rapid-fire shots. He went out and found the shell casings, and he called me instead of calling District 4 police. So I want to commend Commander Fleece for going out and meeting with the fellow and recovering those casings. And I'm really impressed that 6% of the casings we recover are getting hits in the database.
Right.
Is that solving any crimes?
It's, and I could take up hours of conversation here. ShotSpotter is directly tied into our crime gun intelligence unit. Denver's one of 3 cities across the country that are viewed as the premier cities to do this. And then we've expanded that. So when we talk about 60% of those coming up with hits, 40% of those have a Denver-Aurora nexus, meaning this weapon was used in both cities. So what we've done is we've expanded our partnerships. It's called the Regional Anti-Violence Enforcement Network, first of its kind anywhere in the country. And that's one of the reasons why we're getting more guns off the streets than ever before. But this is a partnership with the entire metro area. We have individuals, those that exploit our vulnerable populations, and they don't just stop at Yosemite or 52nd. These are metro and our partners in order to address them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Gason, thank you for recognizing the growth in District 5. And, with that growth, response times continue to be something that we hear about from residents, and then also your enforcement of commercial vehicles. We do have a fair amount of that, especially with the I-70 work. But very quickly, and I prefer, if possible, to follow up email, because I know that we're short on time, but on page 554 of the budget book, underneath budget detail, police administration, expenditures by activity, the line item for community relations and public affairs, it is going to have a reduction of about 83%. And community relations are something that are very important, especially in District 5, and I want to make sure that we're not rolling back all of the work the important work that has been done by your officers and the department to build up trust within the community. And so if I might get a breakdown of what that reduction means, and that through the council office or other community groups, if we can figure out how to keep that community engagement going. And then the second question is related to police investigations, and I know Laura's touched on that with over 50% or 55% reduction in that, but then more specifically, Denver International Airport, they expended a little bit over $18 million in 2019, and that has totally been zeroed out for 2020. So if you could provide some background information on that as well.
I could, and I can even give you a real concise answer. First and foremost, community relations is huge for us, and you have 2 amazing community resource officers there. Essentially, this is moving things from within the budget itself We had a downtown community affairs unit that was staffed by 4 individuals, and they were responsible for some of our large-scale events. We were able to redeploy that, have volunteers in policing help us still conduct these types of events, but essentially we have not sacrificed a single community resource officer. In fact, we have expanded. We have additional districts, districts 3 and 4 have 4 community resource officers. District 1 has expanded, they have 3 community resource officers. So our priority to that direct face-to-face community engagement is actually expanded. It's just in the way that it is captured there. It used to be a centralized unit there in headquarters, and we have put that out into the districts where they can have an even bigger impact on our community. And it's similar with investigations. So we used to have 2 essential divisions, operations and administration. So the airport is now, it's just a swap over. It's part of administration, and then that investigations decrease. All of that is in patrols. It all aligns, but it's going from essentially 2 operations and administration to investigations, patrol, and administration, and then splitting that out. Is that?
In fact, Councilman, if you look on page 546 is where you're referencing, if you look at the top of 547, you'll see at the top that in 2020, so there's 2 zeros in 18 and 19, it's a reorganization. So it's not been zeroed out, it's just, it has been. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Vernon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the sake of time, I'll ask these 2 questions, but I don't need answers now. I can just have them follow up with me. The first deals with 911, page 534. It's either 10% reduction in personnel services, and I just want to know if I can get some follow-up on that in regards to, you don't have anything now, Laura, just for time period, for the sake of time. And I want a beautiful 911 facility, I just want to make sure that we still have the personnel and staffing. And then the second one I saw was on 533, the previous page, and I may just be missing something. Grid, change reduction initiative with Denver, expenditures by activities, these are 21% reduction. So if I could just have someone from Grid follow back up with me, so I can make sure I'm not missing that. So a couple questions I would love to get answered now. Director Grid, if you could just come up. And then Chief Payton, you can be in the queue. I just want to, Director, commend you for the new 911 facility. It's absolutely magnificent, and it's fitting of the city of our size and caliber. And I brought this up yesterday, and I'm going to bring it up again, is the academy. And I recognize we're utilizing dollars now to move forward to the planning phase, but even if we had dollars in the decision today, it would be years before the new facility would be in place. So just emphasizing we have to put our officers in a facility worthy of training, and we have squeezed all the juice out of that orange, and we need to really move forward with a new academy for our officers.
I agree, and we are having conversations about that now.
And Chief, if you can come up. Can you go to slide 14? I believe that was the one I saw. Chief and I spent a lot of time recently with the incidents that were happening in District 5. I'm sorry, it wasn't 14. It was the one where you listed the increase, 24, excuse me, percent growth year over year. As Councilman Sawyer talked about this staffing, so a citizen would look at this and say there's been a 22% increase in population, yet a 14% increase in our staffing, and it would immediately lead them to say we're understaffed. And I would just want to give you the opportunity to share your thoughts. You have 2 police, 50 individual police academies. Is that a capacity issue? Like, if we wanted to give you another class, could we even do it in the current facilities constraints that we have?
So first, let me just tell you that we have a can-do attitude, and we can do anything. So we can do anything with the amount of resources that we have. We will work tirelessly, regardless, to accomplish that mission. We want Denver to be the safest, most equitable city in America, and we are working to that goal. What I can tell you, or really what it comes down to, is that there are some cities that base their staffing on per capita, the officer per 1,000 rate. We're committed to crime prevention, and in order to prevent crime, we need to free up our officers to engage in activity that prevents the car break-in, the home burglary from occurring in the first place. And that's what that 35% model is. That's a great goal, and we're making significant progress to that. I believe we will be right there at the end of this 2020 budget cycle. We're also, similar to that conversation, right, in front of the Stapleton community. We've made significant progress. The high priority calls from 14 minutes down to 11 minutes and 32 seconds. That's great, but what we heard together is people, when they dial 911, they expect a uniformed police officer to be there and to be there quickly. And that's why this budget plan allows us not only to get towards that 35% crime prevention, but will also allow us to chip away and get to that under 10-minute response time that we're working towards. So, there are cities and there's cities nearby us that have actually abandoned that officer per thousand. So we're not growing the department exactly on the population. We are seeing that is an impact. But folks that are coming as tourists have an impact. And if you are stuck on just straight population, you may miss opportunities, and that's why that 35% of proactive time is so important, as well as measuring the response times.
I just see two, and there's probably more than two, but two metrics that we look at. One is response time, you get 10 minutes is the standard.
Is our goal.
Is our goal.
That's a high bar.
Absolutely.
That's
You feel we will have the ability to hit that this year. And the proactive rate, which we spoke with at length for the last term, you believe we will hit the 35% at the conclusion of 2020? Is that your?
We are striving to hit that 35% as quickly as possible. We think that this budget gets us there, and that's why, again, similar to what we discussed, we also look internally. So if there are headquarters positions that don't provide the same output of a single patrol officer, that's our unit of measure. Then those positions are moved out into the district. So we believe that we are not just asking the voter or the people of Denver to do this on a straight budgetary area. We're also looking inward. If we can, for example, we talked about the increase in mental health related calls. So our citywide impact team, we have examples in Southeast Denver where they go out, they are able to connect that person to resources. Somebody that was accessing over 30 hours of police and fire time per month and reduce that to 5 hours per month. We're looking at different ways to get us there, and not just total number of officers in the police department. If there are ways that are outreach with victims advocates or the mental health professionals can help us reduce that, the innovative strategies to help us reduce that, and that's what we're doing. Some of these calls aren't going to necessitate a uniformed police officer showing up, and we want to make sure that we can meet those needs and do them in the best way possible without creating a bloated budget with an officer who typically sticks around 25, 30, 35 years, and we want to make sure that we're asking for the right amount of numbers based on data.
And just one last comment about the public safety cadet program that Councilman Chase was asking. Huge fan of the program, but another opportunity that wasn't mentioned is they speak to my Northeast Denver leadership students. So every summer, 100 students have the opportunity to learn about the program, and one of my alums is in the program right now. So that's just a great program, and I applaud the work that they do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman Silva.
Thank you. I have a lot of questions, so I'll actually just send most of them to you, but I'll ask you a few easy ones. And just a heads up on what's coming your way in light of your comments about equity and the Race and Social Justice Initiative and being proactive so that we don't end up in some of the types of lawsuits that we've ended up in. I am going to be asking for some of the racial and gender breakdowns department-wide, and so that's coming your way. Quick question, when is the data for the racial profiling study going to be available?
So that stock data collection started at the beginning of 2019. We need a year's worth of aggregate data, and we plan on publicly releasing that as soon as we get it.
is there anywhere in your budget where you guys are saving or planning to be able to address the results of that?
That is not part of the budget process. We want to see what the data shows, and then we'll make appropriate changes as a result.
And then another quick one, I think it was slide 50. What was the original expected completion date of building 24 renovation?
That shows partnership. Sorry.
Sure, that's sure.
Sure.
Yeah, you want me to answer it now? Yeah.
Sorry, Councilwoman, could you repeat the question?
What was the expected completion time of the building?
Building 24, we were originally hoping to have it done last year. We've had some pretty significant delays with the building.
And so does that mean we're over budget? Where are we as far as the money's concerned?
We know that we're over budget. We're in the process right now of finishing that up, and once we get that done, we're going to sit down with the builders and look at the wins and the losses and exactly how much over budget.
So we don't have an idea, and that's not here in.
That's not in our slides today.
Are you guys planning to pop that in at any point before the budget gets approved?
We plan on sharing that data once we get to the point where we know we're going to open up the building. We plan on talking about the challenges as well.
The looks from the faces of staff behind her were amazing.
Jury duty, the civic responsibility. And thank you very much to our council colleagues, to Chief Hayes and Director Riggs. Next up is our fire chief, Eric Day.
He's being scolded.
All right, good morning. Still on the slide here, so.
Well, what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are it's very colorful. All right, Denver Fire Department is dedicated to providing quality, timely, and professional emergency services to those who live in, work in, and visit the city and county of Denver. Respecting each other through trust, pride, diversity, integrity, and training, and working together to achieve the highest levels of preparedness, prevention, and community involvement with dedication and purpose. This is what we start every one of our recruits out, the very first day of the academy, and we just actually started the academy this morning. That's why I was part of this. And we asked them to memorize not only this mission statement, but the purpose of the fire department in general, which is to provide service to the community, and what they said when they came on, when they were going through the testing process. We asked them all to write that down, and then every year annually review that, because most people, when they're coming into this profession, always say, I'm here to help people, I want to provide service. And so we asked them that that's their core value. Therefore, if that's their core value, that'll be the core values of the organization. That's the only thing we ask of every member representing the fire department. So there's our breakdown of how the fire department's set up. The key takeaway here is that we actually operate over 6 technical areas. Fire prevention, which is where we spend the majority of our time, not only doing plan review and inspection, but we also do quite a bit of education, trying to prevent fires, but also give education around home safety and initiatives that people can do to actually reduce our call volume. Our technical services division, a little different than when we say TS in the city. This is our division that actually oversees the radio systems, the radio towers in the city and county of Denver. A lot of the dispatch center relies on people that work in the technical services division. All of our fleet and all of our buildings. Unlike most agencies, we actually have a lot of buildings that we have to maintain. We have 39 fire stations throughout the city and county of Denver Airport that we maintain, as well as our headquarters building, line shop, repair shop. Our administration division, that's pretty much the division that deals with all the transfer of personnel issues, training, recruiting, various things like that. Safety and training is, I think, fairly self-explanatory. This is where we bring not only the recruits through, but we also manage the ongoing training for our firefighters, which is actually quite intensive. It's one of the greatest challenges we have, is that if you look at the areas that the fire department is involved in, there's a lot of skills and certifications required, and keeping those certifications up to date and relevant is very challenging. Our operations division is kind of the face of the department that everybody sees. That's the fire trucks responding to emergencies every day, and then the airport operates its own separate division. So, 4 key strategies that we focus on right now. I'm not going to read every one, but I'll go over roughly what they are. The first one is mitigating emergencies, continuing to evaluate how we respond to and mitigate emergencies in the city and county of Denver. And what we do there is we actually make sure that we're compliant with the national standards. And so we measure 2 key dynamics. One is called turnout time, which is really the reflex time of the agency. How fast do we get in motion once we're alerted to an emergency? That goal for us is less than 60 seconds. So once somebody calls 911, they send it over to the dispatchers, they alert the crews. We expect them to be responding to that emergency within 60 seconds. The second one is the response time, how long does it really take to get there? And we've adopted a 4-minute standard, which is consistent with the national standards in the city, county, and Denver. And when you combine the two, we're really looking from the time that a crew is notified of an emergency to being on scene within 5 minutes total. Next key measure we look at is our inspections in the city and county of Denver. While we understand we'll always have to respond to emergencies, the more that we can make sure that we're inspecting our occupancies and that our buildings are being built up to code, plan reviews there, the more we know people are safe in the buildings that they're visiting and living in. Then we do that through monitoring how many inspections that we're able to complete and how many code violations or safety violations are correctly handled. The next one is providing education. And that's not only just to the community, but also to our firefighters to make sure that what they're training on and the measures that they're using to mitigate emergencies in the city and county of Denver and inspect our buildings are up to date and are the most recognized standards so that we continue to be on the cutting edge and not behind the curve. Denver has a great history of always being right on the cutting edge of both training and programs, but also in our code adoption cycles. And then the last one is continuing our department hiring and scheduling practices. And this is really looking about making sure that we're staffing things appropriately, we're being as efficient as we can, and that we're being as inclusive as we can. So when we look at that, these kind of break down into these 3 areas. You can see that the yellow line is the percent of inspections completed in the city of Denver. You'll see that it's almost 100%. It will never probably be 100%. We always round around the 98 because there's always a new business opening up, or there's a business that's going through some type of compliance that we're trying to bring in through a long compliance process of making sure that any identified deficiencies that we're giving them an opportunity to make corrections and come into compliance, or certain businesses start the process in November but don't really complete the process until January or February. So that 98% is actually an extremely good number. We're very lucky that we have businesses in Denver that are very proactive in addressing code. Our inspectors have very little issues in accessing buildings or getting compliance in the city and county of Denver. And I can tell you that's not true across the entire nation. There's a lot of companies that come in and specialize with departments actually getting compliance in the inspection realm. Fortunately in Denver, we've had great business owners and we've never had that issue. You'll see the red line is the response time within 4 minutes. You can look at 2019 and we're going to be right in that 75% mark, which is saying that 75% of the time it's taken 4 minutes or less to get to the scene. Most of those challenges that we see in addressing those come in our growth areas for distance travel, which we've been addressing. In fact, we're able to open a new station in Northfield this year that will help address that. And then overall growth. I'm sure every one of you has tried to drive from one side of the city to the other side of the city. In the last 10 years, it's changed greatly. So we're still continuing to find better ways to address that. And then the blue line is that one that we have total control of. How fast are we moving and getting out the door? The goal is 90% of the time. And if you look at our blue line, we're actually achieving that and actually exceeding that a little bit, which puts us well above the national standards. If you dive into some of those a little deeper, you'll see that the number of plan reviews, which is basically the new businesses or new construction in the city and county of Denver, you can see that since 2016 they have continued to go up. You can see that in 2019 we're still projecting more building, more plan reviews, but we're projecting a better turnaround in those times. We've been able to get more efficient. Fortunately, we had great support from everybody here last year, and we were able to provide quite a bit of relief to that division. So we're looking at having at least 65% of those plan reviews on time this year. And then probably the one thing that matters most to people out there watching would be, is what is our insurance rating? We can say how good we are, we feel we are, but really, what's that third-party validation? And so the Insurance Services Office actually provides every city with a public protection class rating. Denver has historically been E2. In 2018, we were actually able to achieve a 1, which is the best rating that you can achieve, which this is the rating that insurance companies use to set the insurance rates in the city of Denver. Has a huge impact on commercial insurance rates, but overall, it lowers the insurance rates for people who live in the city of Denver. And then in fire operations, you can see, much like the police department, that our call volume continues to go up. Fires continue to go up, and medical responses continue to go up. But we've actually improved over the last several years in our response times. And then you'll see that the number of budgeted recruits, you can kind of see it stays in that 48 range, except that you see spikes like 81. And that's typically when we brought on new programs. So the 81 you see in 2019 was specifically to address 2 areas, and that was our new fire station Northville. And then we also sat down a budget and looked at our relief factor for all the companies across the city, and we added additional firefighters to increase that relief factor so that we're not relying on overtime too much and creating a burnout situation within the department. So fortunately last year, like I said, we had great support from this body, and we were able to address many of our gap areas. So in 2020, we're really able to focus in on making sure that our programs are sustainable, and that as we go into the future, we're going to be able to maintain a service level with only a few minor tweaks to some of our gap areas. And so the very first expenditure you'll see is the med unit. Now this isn't a new program, and many of you saw this last year, but we've been budgeting this annually as we're looking at the effectiveness of it. What I can't tell you is the med unit is a small 2-person crew that is able to respond to medical emergencies in a small geographic area where we have a lot of low acuity calls, and they provide the most efficient of that. The med unit right now is staffed with overtime, so you'll see a 0 FTE count here. However, in November, we have a ballot measure that will be on the ballot that will allow us to hire a single role EMT versus using cross-trained firefighter EMT apparatus, which will allow them to provide more efficiency and more hours of service. And I'll talk about the medical unit a little bit later on in the presentation as well. Our other expansion that we're looking at completing in 2020 is additional staffing at Denver International Airport. A few years back, we built a new station out there with the long-term goal of staffing it with an engine and a truck company. This year in 2020, we will bring on that truck company in July, so you'll see an expansion for 15 firefighters there. This is the units that actually respond out to all the structures when you go out to the airport. This station is only structural and only responds to things like Worldport, where you see the new waiting areas for people coming to pick up passengers, some of the restaurants that are out there, the doggy daycares that are out there. There's a lot of structures out at the airport. It's almost its own city. The structural, or what we would call the landside support for the Denver International Airport. 2 fire recruit academies is our budget base expansion. This is designed to keep up with kind of the attrition. As the police department talked about, we bring firefighters in, but that's because we know that there's firefighters that will be retiring every year, and so we sit down with budget and figure out how many are going to retire that we know about, and then we kind of take a guess about how many of the surprise retirements annually. Estimate about 10 retirements that we don't know about annually. I can tell you this year we're already at 16. And then our collective bargaining increases, as well as the cost of goods going up. Protective gear, mainly bunking gear. I know there were some questions about bunking gear earlier from Councilman Ortega. That bunking gear, the cost is going up. The budget expansion there. And then a reductions. So fortunately for us, we list 2 reductions here. However, they will not impact services. The first one is our special operations chief, who has considerable oversight in some of our programs that are actually administered through one of our special revenue funds. This assistant chief oversees our urban search and rescue and FEMA teams, as well as our wildland team. And so we're moving that position over to that revenue fund, so it'll come out of the general fund. And then the other one is delaying the staffing of a fire System technical specialist in our line shop. It's a position that we've had open. We're evaluating that position. We'll continue to evaluate it, but right now it looks like that we have appropriate staffing levels to accomplish the workload that's there. So let's talk about some of our race and social justice initiatives. We talked about the med unit. What's really exciting about the med unit is the degree of efficiency and dedication to purpose it has. It is able to respond to what has typically been some of our most underserved residents in the city and county of Denver, but with some of the greatest needs. And so it's been able to go in and help people that are typically calling because they have nowhere else to go. And so they have either significant mental health issues or they have significant issues that are really affecting their day-to-day living. So the med unit responds downtown and kind of down the Colfax Capitol Hill corridor. What we're seeing is they're responding to a lot of individuals that are experiencing homelessness, or they're having a mental health crisis, or even food insecurity. And so right now, if you have nowhere else to go and you're in need of assistance, you kind of call 911, right? And if it isn't criminal related, whether it's a crime in progress or a crime that occurred, it typically falls over to the fire department. And so what the medical unit's been able to go into is you'll have people that aren't going to the doctor because they have to make the decision whether do I spend money on a cab or do I spend money on food. I'm having some type of a mental health crisis, but I just don't know where to turn. And so I call 911. And so what they're able to do is they're able to go in and really understand the needs of the community in there and then start directing people more appropriately to the resources that are going to benefit them in the long run and move away from the Band-Aid approach of 911. And so one of the things that they do is they partner up with co-responders. We heard Chief Bates talk about the clinicians that are embedded in the police department. We also utilize them. And so now we're able to sit there and say, okay, yes, you've got an immediate or an acute crisis, but it's complicated by a long-term crisis, whether, again, like I said, whether they're experiencing homelessness, a long existing mental health issue, dependency issues or whatever. And we're able to now take these people and move them out of 911. A lot of times more appropriately, move them into Denver Human Services. We're able to help them with housing, food, and whatnot. And so we're really excited about this unit. And right now we're using overtime firefighters. If we're able to move them to a sole EMS role, EMT after the November ballot, then we'll have people that are there. That's where they spend all their time. They really get to know this community and really dial into making long-term substantial change for them. And then our other initiative is our Recruit Academy. And really, it's the culmination of years and years of effort. We've looked at how do you make the fire department more inclusive. And so we've worked with civil service to change the entire hiring process for the fire department. It really started out by having recruiters that are dedicated, that spend their time in the community. They work with the fire stations and other firefighters to kind of be that word of mouth to recruit people into the fire department. They work with programs like Councilman Herndon's program. They spend a lot of time with the cadet program. But what we saw was that there were several major barriers in becoming a Denver firefighter. And the first was our testing process. And so we would spend time, and the recruiters go out and say, I think you're going to be a great firefighter. Then they'd have to sign up for the test. The problem is we had 30,000 people trying to sign up for this test that had 1,000 testing spots. So it was like buying concert tickets. You had to get on there, log on there, whoever got in there first, got the testing spot. So we were able to work with civil service and say, what if we create a program where our recruiters reach out and create a mentoring program? Can you provide them a guaranteed testing slot? Civil service complied with that. And so now when our recruiters go out and they say, Councilman Herndon, I think you're going to be a great firefighter. If you put some skin in the game and you come to our recruiting sessions, we'll guarantee you a testing slot. And so that program was extremely successful. We greatly diversified the pool of candidates that we had. However, the next barrier we saw is how do you change the top of that 10% in that pool? Because it was heavily dominated by people who received preference points. Traditionally, the only preference points you received were language preference points or military preference points, which didn't tend to benefit some of the areas that we traditionally struggled in recruitment. Two of the areas that we were struggling the most was female candidates and African American candidates. So then we were able to sit down with the city and civil service and we created what was called the Candidate Apprentice Program, which allowed our recruiters to look at people that had been successful and had taken the test and gotten good scores, they just didn't have that preference points. And now through volunteer hours in the city and county of Denver, working with the fire department, they're able to earn those preference points. And so we had that program going. And so we're like, okay, that's our immediate program, but how do you build a pipeline? And so we've been doing a lot of initiatives around summer camps, and we really engaged at the middle school level, and we engaged at an all-female camps. Those have all come together, and it's these academies that are now letting us see the fruits of those benefits. And so I know there's maybe one of the questions, but we just started an academy this morning, and I can tell you it's 29% female. The national average is about 1% for the fire service having females. It's 17% African American. Two of the areas that we had struggled, quite a bit in trying to bring those individuals into the fire department, we're starting to see the results of it. But that's why having those academies every year is so important too. Because you can have all the programs in the world to recruit people, if you're not actually bringing them on, then it's a waste of effort. And Budget's been really great working with us on that, and we're really excited for some of those programs to actually take effect. And then the last one shows our revenue and expenses year over year, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chief, very much. And first this time. Would you speak for just a minute? I'm always interested to hear about the Wildland team. I know you have staff that goes various emergency locations around the country.
Absolutely. So one thing you might not see intuitive is that Denver, we actually have one of the largest wildlife teams in the United States, yet we have relatively zero urban interface, especially if you exclude their airport. But what we've done is we've said, hey, Denver has 1,000 trained firefighters. We should be able to help our neighbors. Because typically Colorado is plagued by wildland events. And we've seen devastating things like the Hayden Fire, Black Forest Fire. So what we did is we allowed a lot of our firefighters to go get that additional training as wildlife firefighters. And then when the community's in need, and we've seen them anywhere from as close as west all the way up to Alaska, they're able to put a request in for resources that we may have. We send those resources out. The nice thing is that we get full reimbursement for it, so there is zero cost to the taxpayers of Denver. We're able to be that good neighbor to help out other communities. At the same time, our firefighters get a ton of incredible training through this without actually costing the city any additional funds.
Thank you for that, Chief. Councilman Hines, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Tate, I want to thank you for the work you're doing with the two-tier system in the Med Unit. Council District 10, along with Council District 9, we see a lot of opportunity for increased use of the Med Unit. I would imagine. I certainly speak for myself. I don't want to necessarily for Councilwoman Sedevaka, but apparently I can now speak for her. So at any rate, I am excited to see that in greater operation. As I understand, working with Denver Fire 858, that your firefighters are also excited about the program as well. And it seems like a win all around in that we're reducing wear and tear on our heavy equipment. We're able to navigate our dense urban environment faster than using an engine or ladder vehicle, because it's just a pickup right now, right?
It is.
Is that your goal long term? Is you just use a pickup, or?
That is our plan where appropriate. So we always look and say, you can't take a broad brush and say everybody receives the same service with the same type of equipment, because we really want to look and say what makes the most sense in the right places. And so where we're seeing the big call volume spikes, which you're right, Council District 9, Council District 10, see a large percentage of that. Right now, we know that apparatus works well for maneuvering the streets. It's a smaller one, its turnaround times are quicker, and that complement of personnel are. And so for the Med Unit, we see where it's currently existing to be the highest need area and the most efficiency of it. But we also see other opportunities on the other side of downtown and the South Federal Corridor. And again, we're very data driven, and so where the data tells us that the existing resources that are already there no longer have the capacity to handle the call volume, but the call volume increase is due to calls that are well suited for the Med Unit, that's where we would place the Med Unit. traditional approach would have been to say, downtown, there's too call volume, the ladder floor's going on 7,000 calls a year, put a new engine company in there. And that's what you would see in a lot of departments. We looked at it a little bit different, so what is the exact calls, and can you integrate a different type of response vehicle in there that'll actually achieve the same results you're wanting by keeping your fire apparatus in service and available for those types of calls. And that's kind of how the med unit came about. It's been years of tweaking it around, playing around, and looking at the staffing level. And we think after, 3 to 4 years of running it, we know what the staffing needs to look like. That's why we put the ballot question on there. We also know what kind of apparatus works. We started off with an Expedition, and now the new one is a truck. It's able to carry supplies in the back. It doesn't have a transport role, so what configuration's on there makes a big difference. And so we think we're at that point of what will provide the most efficient service, but that's something that we're evaluating every day. And I can't promise you the next med unit would look exactly like this med unit, or this med unit won't transform sometime in the future. But we're always looking at the data, we're looking at the needs, and then trying to provide the most efficient resource.
And then just one other brief set of questions. So I looked at one of your slides, and you had a number of calls and then a number of fires eliminated, and I think it was about 1.5%, something like that. I'm just doing the math in my head. So yeah, 121,000 calls estimated and 2,600 actual fires extinguished. So that suggests to me, again, I think certainly we want engine and ladder vehicles where they need to be so that we can respond to actual fires quickly. But as District 9 and District 10 continue to grow and have a lot of high-rise buildings, navigating some of the heavy equipment I'm sure that's an increasing concern for you. Is there anything that we can do to support you in, as we continue to densify our urban core?
Absolutely. We've been incredibly blessed. We've been supported well by the administration, council. What we're always looking at is that in-service availability time. I mean, it's easy to say, hey, 1% of the calls is fire calls, right? But if we look back all the way to the 70s, you'll see there was several thousand fires every year, and they represented a larger percentage. And so the story is that they're still going on with the fire calls, but in addition to the fire calls, they're going on medical calls, they're going on hazmat calls, they're going on technical rescue calls. We're doing wildland now. We're doing a lot of more things, so we have to make sure that the equipment we have is able to be kind of a multi-tool, basically. And so we're always looking at what is efficient. And I can tell you that as we try to narrow our streets and we try to slow down traffic, we're looking at what are our opportunities as well. And we've been supported well by budget and looking at purchasing the right apparatus. We actually purchased a smaller engine than what had been purchased in the past years ago. We've been doing this for quite a while now. We just changed the trucks that we're buying, the ladder trucks that we're buying. One of the challenges is the outriggers that come out the side having that clearance on the street. The new ones that we're getting actually come straight down. They're lighter weight, but they don't compromise on any of the capabilities. And so we're always looking at that, and just having that support and that understanding from council is all we ever ask.
And also related to densification, so I live in a 12-story high-rise building. There are 2 elevators that seem to go down a lot. Are inspections, you don't inspect elevators, right? That's someone else?
So it used to be the state, and it was the Division of Oil and Gas that was responsible for elevators in all the state of Colorado. A few years back, recognizing that we wanted greater oversight and ability to make sure that these elevators were up to code, or when they go down, we had greater influence in bringing them back up. We actually took over elevator inspections in the city and county of Denver, so the fire department is in charge of all conveyances, which includes elevators, escalators, moving walkways. And so we do, and we did it exactly for what you said, is that we've seen that elevators would go down, and then if you're a resident in there and try and get that, we have to kind of reach out to the state would reach out to elevator contractors, and now in the city and county of Denver, since we've taken over that oversight, we've been able to get those situations corrected a little bit quicker, and we have a very good working relationship with the elevator community.
Our elevators seem to go down all the time, and they were down for 6 weeks, they were up for 4 weeks, and then down for another 6 weeks, or one of the 2 elevators. And we actually got fined, as I understand it, from Denver Fire, because rightfully so, they're responding to an elevator, rescuing someone out of a stuck elevator, and if there was an actual fire, this equipment and personnel would be, otherwise occupied. And so I would love to support you specifically with elevators, because our elevator went down again last weekend. And, it's just, I don't understand, very frustrating. I can't even get the elevator company to respond, even as a person of the board of the HOA or as a city council person. So, that's annoying.
And it sounds like you're already doing what we need, is having that level of understanding. So when a building gets fined for that, for not keeping their elevators in compliance, is understanding there's a very valid reason behind that. And that's where the building owners, and we're working with them, they're holding those elevator contractors, and they should be passing those fines along to those contractors as well, as part of their performance contracts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Torres.
Thank you. So I'm noticing, and this is true, I think, for all of the safety, race and social justice measures that were given, that no burden is mentioned. It's either not applicable or none defined. And not to ask you to answer it now, but I really do want to challenge us that we wouldn't be doing this project if there were no inequities in all of these systems. And even in recruit academies, it's okay to mention where we fall behind when it comes to racial and ethnic recruitment or gender recruitment and where we want to be. Those are the kinds of things that we want to be mentioning, or even the med unit. Where aren't we that you need to be when it comes to community response, call response? What are the communities, the neighborhoods that might demand something like that, but they're not there right now? So when we talk about burden, it's not just best intention. It really is about where does the inequity lie, because that's what we need to keep track of as we move forward. So as we continue to incorporate this into the way that we talk, it's okay to talk about burdens as long as we're working on them, and we have some goals ahead of us.
Absolutely, I agree. I think when we looked at it, we were actually looking at what is the burden that the new program or the program actually would have on the community. I actually agree, call out, and that's why I told you with areas that, where we've traditionally had more difficulty in recruiting, or the communities that have been underserved because they just haven't had access to those services. So I agree wholeheartedly.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilman Sotobon.
Thank you so much. You guys have the med unit going on, and then the police have the co-responders, and then we have multiple groups who have outreach workers that are not in the city but are working with the same population, specifically the homeless population. I'm wondering if there's any current coordination or if there's any plan to make sure that there's coordination, at least within our two experimental co-responder med unit pilots.
Great question. So the med unit are EMTs, and so they're responding to an acute emergency usually. And so it may be somebody that is fallen, let's say on Colfax, they fell, and they cut their face or something. So they're providing that emergency medical care, but now they're also being trained to help navigate them into other programs. And so let's say we find somebody that's got some significant mental health issues, and they really need to, receive longer-term treatment or a substance abuse issue. Then that's when we would coordinate with the co-responders, who tend to be clinicians, that can provide that referral into the system that's going to more appropriately provide long-term care and better outcomes versus the 911 call. And so the med unit is that acute, right away, let's solve the problem, and then it's coordination with those very programs that you just called out, like the clinicians that we call co-responders, getting them into the long-term, sustainable, better outcomes. And so they are very closely coordinated, but they provide a very different service. We see it at the shelters as well, too. So we may have somebody at the shelter that has, sometimes just shortness of breath because they haven't been receiving medical care, but they have a whole myriad of other issues. And so then we will put them into the system that would best serve them for long-term care as well.
So what does that coordination look like? Because I know that DHS has people who are working out in the community, out in the shelters, and I get that you might figure out the need and then call somebody and pass the ball, but that's not my idea of coordination. what do you guys do intentionally before you get any calls to make sure that you know the chain of communication, you know how each group can support?
So before the call, we know where we want to refer them when we identify and so we train our people. And that's why I say having those dedicated EMTs who really know that community and know who the exact resource is. But I'll give you a great example. So go and you look at somebody that's living in what seems to be a normal house in the neighborhood and has everything they need, but we're going time and time on just a fall. Person, they call because they fell. Well, now we start going every single day because this person fell. And now this person is just pick an age, 85 years old, and they're continuing to fall, and we notice that they're nourished and they're not able to take care of themselves. They're not able to transition from their bed to the bathroom, and so we continue to go on those calls. We then have our firefighters know that the proper route is to work with DHS and Adult Protective Services. Then by identifying that person and bringing in those people, particularly we've had the navigator training or to provide the proper referrals, the ultimate goal there would be to move this person out of living in their house independently and looking at some type of assisted living situation where they can receive the proper care and so that they can have help transitioning around and mobility throughout the day and that they can actually make sure that they're eating and doing that. And sometimes it is just a matter of having somebody come in and help them every day, and sometimes it's really helping them move from independent living to some type of assisted living. And that would be more of a simple one.
So on top of these pilots, we've been told that there's a potential for a cahoots pilot that I did not see any budgeting for. Is the cahoots pilot off the table, or where are we with that, and where is it showing up in the budget request?
I'm gonna have Chief Paisley come up. I know we have a meeting on cahoots coming up real shortly.
Can you tell us what that is?
I'm gonna let Chief Paisley tell you about cahoots. This is his.
The community deserves a ton of credit for bringing this forward in the first place, and you're correct, it's not part of this budget process. This is referring back to earlier questions with the Caring for Denver, possible financial support for this type of program, as well as an additional state grant that we're looking at as well. This is in the early phases of this potential crisis response, mobile crisis response outreach, and it is done in coordination with the fire department, with Denver Health and the paramedic division. I would love to point out the fact that the safety department is really putting all of these things together, led by Emily Locke and Deputy Director Walker. That you're correct. We have a lot of folks. I mean, it's indicative of Denver's spirit to have a big heart and try to help people, and that's why this initiative passed. But the safety department is coordinating all of these responses. That way, there is a warm handoff from what Chief Tate discussed to either a mental health co-responder, a victim's advocate, a community-based organization that can support that. We are really working to do that. There are regular meetings that take place, and then so Cahoots is a program out of Eugene, Oregon. It's essentially a mobile crisis response, and we're working through a potential pilot with the community members, making sure that we have guideposts that are set up by the community members in order to roll this out. And that is something that we don't think will impact the budget because the board members, the executive director of Caring for Denver is part of these ongoing conversations, as well as a recent state grant that we're looking for. We want to explore this program. We want to put a pilot up, evaluate the data, but we don't plan on hitting the budget here with two potential financial sources. Is that fair?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gilmore, did you have a?
Yes, Mr. Chair, first time. I don't have a question. I just wanted to say a sincere thank you to Chief Tate and to the mayor for the 16 firefighters at 35 at the airport. So thank you.
Can you tell us if we have multiple locations for radio towers?
We do.
And do we ever have any interference where we have co-located cell towers on any of our fire stations?
So we have not had cellular interference with our radio system for quite a few years. if you remember when there was a Nextel, does everybody remember Nextel?
Right.
The frequencies they were on actually compete with public safety, but a few years back, the
That's
federal
right.
government made everybody move off that and provide dedicated frequencies for public safety. And even in the cellular world, there's now what is called FirstNet, which is band 14, which is a dedicated frequency for public safety. So we don't typically have any interference from cell phones on an ongoing basis. That's one of the assessments they go through before they co-locate with our towers, whether it's in a large simulcast tower or a tower on the fire station.
So very briefly, on the issue of people not pulling over when we have emergency vehicles trying to come through, I think we need some kind of public education campaign, because every time I'm on the road and I see an emergency vehicle, I pull over, but nobody else does. And I can't imagine how frustrating it is for the engineers and our police personnel who are trying to get to a situation. So I'm just, I guess, asking if that's an ongoing issue and challenge, and if there's something maybe we could do by pushing a message out through all of our social media platforms, through chat, because I think it's a problem for us.
You know, anecdotally, I absolutely agree with you. We know that we see people pull over far less. We think that there's a combination of things that lead to that. One, the sheer congestion of the roadway is so much you have nowhere to pull over. And two, the cars are so much better today because they're so much quieter and stuff. You don't necessarily hear that emergency vehicle until it's right up on you. And then you're in that, oh no, what do I do? And so we see a lot of that panic mode. But absolutely, I mean, we would love to see everybody pull to the right. It's amazing how many people don't know where to go to.
So we have on-call contracts, maybe we could do something with our marketing team to help us do maybe a public education campaign. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chief Hay, thank you so much for your presentation. Thanks for the work you and your team did.
Thank you.
Next up, Sheriff Patrick Furman.
Good afternoon, everyone, or almost afternoon today. Appreciate your patience as we go through this. So the mission of the Sheriff's Department, the Sheriff's Department is to provide safe and secure custody for those placed in our care and perform all of our duties in a manner that is responsive to the needs of our diverse community. In our budget book, the overview of our divisions is set up really in 4 pillars. This is really specifically for budget purposes. For operational purposes, we have a little bit different organizational structure, which is on our webpage as well. So I won't spend a lot of time going into that, but really we're focused on operations, which are our 2 main jail facilities, the courthouses. We have support services, which operates our data analytics team, our professional standards team, and our assessments and inspections unit. And then we have a chief of staff division that is responsible for a lot of our civilian oversight, which would include our programs, our community engagement and outreach, and performance management. Our strategic plan, we've just rolled out what we called our strategic plan 2.0 this year, and have been very deliberate in how we're rolling that out to staff, doing that in bits and pieces. We rolled out the entire plan to them in May. This is a result of getting impact from, or input from everybody involved. We took this to the Sheriff's Advisory Board, we took this to our command staff, to our senior leadership, and to our deputies to get their feedback on what they thought was important. And so we really focus on 4 main areas: community or organizational culture, which looks at objectives and activities aimed to define and establish shared values and beliefs formed by the department's guiding principles. And really under here is where we talk about, and I'll speak a little bit more on our equity and inclusion. We've actually included that in our strategic plan. Employee experience, really looking at how do we create an environment for our staff as they deal with a very challenging population. We'll talk more about that population here as we move forward as well, but what kind of resources can we provide to them in terms of training? We're looking at things like policies and procedures. We know that we have a lot of policies and procedures. Many of them are very complicated, and so some of the feedback we got from staff is how can we reduce the number of policies that we have and how can we make them more readable so that they're more effective. So that's one of the strategic objectives under that. Communication, we understand year after year when we look at feedback from staff that communicating is really important. So we're looking at different ways to effectively communicate with them. We have a very diverse staff that communicate in a lot of different ways. Some like emails, some like videos, some like posters. And so how do we find an effective way to really help staff understand and communicate best with them? Inmate wellness is one of our pillars. How do we provide the best services for our inmates? We want to keep our inmates safe. We want to provide them with resources so that when they do get released, that they're not going to come back. This is one of those areas where we don't like repeat customers. So anything that we can do to help inmates reintegrate back into society, we want to provide that for them. One of our challenges is because we typically have a very short stay for inmates, is identifying what those resource needs are early on, so that if they stay with us, we can provide those resources. But if they happen to get out, we can direct them to one of our community partners to continue those resources and get them the help that they need. And the fourth pillar is community partnership. We understand the importance of working with our community. We define our community a little bit different than, for example, a police department, which is very geographically based. They have districts. When we think about community, we think about groups. So we look at things like inmate families as part of our community. We look at inmates as part of our community. We look at things like our mental health community. And so when we talk about community, we look at it a little bit differently. We talk about it a little bit differently, and we approach it differently. One of the main things that we've done in community partnerships is we've established a sheriff's advisory board. And so we use them to help us understand and communicate with the community in their particular networks. As it relates to race and social justice initiatives, with the population that we work with on a daily basis, we understand, we recognize the historical inequities based on race and ethnicity in the criminal justice system. And so really, we look at almost everything that we do tying back to race and social justice. Some of the specific things that we wanted to point out, and we'll talk about as we move forward here a little bit, is expansion of some court deputies, building 22 deputies, which I'll talk about in some upcoming slides. Some additional staffing to support Senate Bill 191, which has to do with the amount of time it takes us to get individuals processed out of the facility, and then body cameras at intake. All of these aim at addressing, keeping safe and addressing the needs of the inmate population, to keep them safe while they're with us, and then get them processed in and out of the facility as quickly as possible. We are currently and have been working in conjunction with other departments in the city on a research project with UC Berkeley to look specifically at recruitment and retention and how different programs that we have either help or hurt things like recruitment and retention. So they're looking at things like how we recruit. They're looking at some of our wellness programs and how we administer our disciplinary process and what effects that has on maintaining, recruiting and maintaining employees. And then our Building 24 women's facility is really built around the concept of gender responsiveness and trauma-informed programs. We believe this is really going to be a game changer as it relates to our female population, both in the way that we manage the physical part of the building and the programs that we provide. And then finally, under race and social justice, it's really important to us that we provide opportunities for inmates and their families to connect. And so earlier this year, we had some changes with our visitation systems. We've seen a tremendous increase in the amount of both on-site and remote visitation that's been available for families. We believe a lot of that has to do with some of the changes that we've made in the scheduling process. It's easier for them to schedule visits. We added recently remote visitation, which gives family members and friends the ability to visit remotely, so they don't have to drive down to the downtown facility or drive out to the Smith Road facility. And now with contact visits, which we hope to bring on board later on in 2020, this is also going to provide another opportunity for family and friends to maintain contact with their families. Some of our key strategic measures. We averaged about 2,000 inmates on an average day. We've seen some significant decreases over the last couple of years. We attribute this to the great partnerships that we've had with all of our partners. Chief Payson to talk a little bit about the number of arrests that are down and the number of individuals that bring into the jail. We've got a great relationship with the DA and with the courts in providing some opportunities to divert individuals from the jail and then to get them out in a more timely fashion. So we think a combination of all this has really helped us see a downward trend. And I'd like to refer back to Chief Payson, who's going to steal this chart, but where everything else is growing in the city. I think it makes this slide even more impactful and more significant that while everything else in the city is growing, the population, the business, we're seeing a decrease in the jail population. I think it's very significant. The other thing that I want to point out on this slide is we broke it down into bookings with and without mental health codes. We don't diagnose, provide diagnosis for inmates, and so we use the term code. Those are individuals that have some sort of mental health issue going on. We know through our data that about 25% of those processed data on a daily basis have some sort of mental health code. You'll see in some further slides, we know that on any given day, we've got about 50% of our population have a mental health alert. That changes in those numbers of 25 versus 50% is due to the length of stay. We know that inmates with mental health alerts traditionally spend about 2/3, 3 times more than somebody without a mental health alert. So again, when we talk about individuals with mental health, whether it's to the police department, to the fire department, to the sheriff's department, it's a significant issue for us. And it's a significant thing that we need to look at on all levels. Again, just another slide as it relates to the inmate population. And you can see that that's going down. We are looking at several things, programs to help us address the mental health issues. One of the things that we know is particularly that affects the length of stay is competency reviews. So individuals that come in with mental health issues, if they have to go through a competency hearing, that typically adds about 30 days to their stay in jail. And so we've been working with courts and working with some of our community providers to speed up that process or to utilize competency exams if they've been in custody previously. We think that that's going to have a significant impact on us. We've spent a lot of time with staff, helping staff understand this unique population. And so we've mandated that all of our SWAN staff go through crisis intervention training. And so we are at 100% completion. We've actually made that pretty much an essential function of the position. So before they come off of probation, they have to successfully complete crisis intervention training. We've also added each year after that additional training as it relates to de-escalation, mental health understanding. Additionally, we've dedicated the captain full-time to working and overseeing our mental health. So he works looking at performance measurements with Denver Health. He works directly with the inmate population. He works with our staff to make sure that they're getting the training that they need. But we really feel like that's important that we have dedicated staff looking specifically at mental health. This is, you've seen this for all 3 departments now. This is our staffing optimization chart. The purple line on the top is our authorized strength, that's what we're budgeted for. The blue line is our actual strength, and so that takes into account individuals who are on modified duty, military leave, for whatever reason, they're not actually working a post. And then the red line below, the red line on the bottom, are effective strength, and those are actual individuals that are filling posts. And so you can see pretty much the difference between the red line and the purple line is where the OT, the overtime, comes in as it relates specifically to staffing. We've made some tremendous efforts as it relates to overtime. In 2017, we've saved almost $1 million by reducing overtime in areas just by managing it better. 2018, about $2 million less. And again, that's with less staff, but that's just with looking at areas where we could be more efficient in how we utilize that overtime without shutting down any posts that are safety related. What that means as well is that means we've given back a little over 51,000 hours to our staff. We understand that working overtime is a burden. We don't want staff to work overtime if they don't have to, and so by looking at how we can more effectively manage the overtime population through performance management data, we were able to give those hours back to our staff so that they can have that time off that they need to be with their family and have their outside life. So as it comes to our expansions, our budget, we've got some new courts coming online in 2020, and so in order for us to staff those courts, that we're responsible for the inmates and safety of the courtrooms. So we've got 2 courts coming on board. One of them will be coming online in March, and the second one in July. And so for 2011, the realized cost of it, the annualized cost of that will be $352,000. This year it's less because we're ramping up to fill those. Building 22 is one of our buildings out at the county jail, and actually has 4 different housing units. Right now, we go to minimum staffing during the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. hours. This will add deputies so that right now a deputy during the 10 to 6 will supervise both 2 housing units because the inmates are all locked down. This will give us the ability to staff each of those units with a deputy during those hours, which we believe is important to maintain safety and keep an eye on the inmate population during those hours. SB 191 addressed several things, and particularly for our case, it addressed the amount of time it takes to get individuals processed out from the jail. And so we've got several pilot projects going on right now looking at some process improvements. We're doing some things with the clearance process. We also understand that this is going to take some staffing. And so this is for 6 deputies and 2 civilian FTEs down at our release area as we start to get more efficient and introduce these processes to get us to the point where we need to be by January of this year. And we think we're on a good track for that, looking at the data we're getting back. But really what that means is we need to get individuals out in under 4 hours. Body cameras at intake. This is something that actually our staff is very enthusiastic about. We're going to purchase the equipment this year. And so the $85,000 is to maintain for storage of the video and maintain. We chose intake because that's our area where we have the most volatility. This is the area where inmates are brought in straight off the street. We have the most incidents down there. We have inmates that are typically obviously going through crisis, inmates that haven't been diagnosed yet with mental health issues, inmates that may be detoxing or coming down off of something. And so we believe that this is a good area to start. We plan on introducing this more throughout the department, but it'll give us some more transparency. One of the differences with body cameras, I know you all know that we have a lot of cameras in the jail already. One of the benefits of body cameras is you get a different perspective for one, but the other thing you get that you don't get with our facility cameras is audio. And many times when we're looking at incidences and trying to evaluate what actually went on, audio becomes very, very important. And so these body cameras will give us the ability to look at those from a whole different perspective. Some of our reductions. We have unbudgeted some uniform posts that we had not been able to fill, and so we've been realigning some of our staff. This is a temporary reduction that we'll come back and ask as we're able to recruit and get more people on board. Decreasing training instructors by 2 deputies. And so this is just reassigning 2 deputies that we currently have at the academy back to a traditional assignment. We have a deputy currently assigned to our GMS project. Once that project is launched later this year, we're going to reduce that position and reassign that deputy back to a post. ASA schedulers. These are individuals that we civilianized several years ago to take some workload off of our sergeants. We've realized some efficiencies with that as they've gotten better at what they do and understood the telestaff software program. We believe that we can reduce that by a couple of specialists and still maintain the workload that they're doing. We currently have two sergeants assigned to civil liabilities. We plan on civilianizing one of those, and we believe that the workload will still be okay with that. Reduction in services and supplies, reduction and or civilianization of the mental health sergeant. The captain that was assigned full-time to mental health. Our plan originally was to reallocate one of our sergeants to help them out. We've had some discussions, and we believe that we can accomplish the same if we make that a civilian position, which is less expensive than a uniform position. And then this is our traditional slide.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate the presentation. Councilwoman Ortega.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sheriff, first I want to say thank you for your service to our city. I know when you came into this position, it was after a lengthy report that had been done looking at our department and, you know, a lot of expectations to take on many different components of trying to address some system changes within our department. And I think you've worked on many, many of those that have positioned the Sheriff's Department to be in a much better place. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
On slide 47, you talk about the employee experience and the wellness of the employees, I think, is an important component as well. I know the police department talked about employee wellness, and you know, obviously we want our inmates to be safe, but at the same time, we also want our deputies to be safe. And so I don't know that, for example, you know, we've got a whole mental health component that works with the inmates. When we have deputies that are assaulted, is there something that they're plugged into to make sure that their mental health continues to be addressed?
Yes. Yeah, we have a lot of wraparound services. We start by trying to be proactive. And so when we talk about wellness, we have a very robust early outreach program to try to get to deputies when we start seeing things that aren't quite right. We have a wellness coordinator that really helps bring resources, whether it be nutritional, whether it be physical, whether it be emotional, understanding that with the population that we work with, the deputies have to be on top of their game. If they've got stuff going on at home, they're going to bring that to work with them. So we understand that that's an incredibly important part of making sure that our staff stays well. We also have a very robust our peer support service, so that when individuals are involved in whether they're incidences within the jail, whether they're even incidences on the outside, that we've got individuals that will reach out to them, help them understand what resources are available to them, talk with them, help them understand what that process might be. We continue to add things, even as it relates to like a disciplinary process, understanding that that's a traumatic thing for staff to go through. And so how can we help staff understand what that process is about, understand that it's not the end of the world, what's coming up and what has to be done. And so a lot of services and a lot of people that really care about the staff that are in charge of these programs and do a really good job of reaching out to them.
So you're saying all that's captured under
It is.
employee experience
Yes.
as well? That's great. Just a quick question about Building 22. That's the newest building on the campus, correct?
Building 24 is the one that we're renovating. Building 22 is the one where right now we have some of the mental health programming out of the county.
So
It's the four units together.
So Building 24 is the newest building on the campus, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we're building out that top floor,
Yes.
and Building 22, is that where the women are currently?
Building 21.
21, okay. So is 20, the part that's being renovated right now, is that where all the women are going to that were in 21, and what happens to that part of the building?
So yeah, so all our hope is to house everybody all the females that we can in Building 24. And so that will include everybody that's currently in 21, and when they move out, There's some upkeep that needs to take place in there, and we're gonna take advantage of that while the area is empty. And we'll probably use that for something else as we redistribute the population. We also hope to bring as many of the females from the downtown up to building 24. Right now, we have some special management in the downtown. There's some that have to stay downtown because that's where the courts are until we get them to the courts. But the idea is to use many of the females together on the 24 as we can.
And the budget for renovation, was that kind of combined with the two locations kind of all being done concurrently? So the renovation to 21, will that happen concurrently with the work that will be completed in building?
We can't do it until we actually get on 21. So it's a separate project. What was included in the building 24 was renovating the first floor, which we had nails in originally. And then the upper half of it was just shelving. And so it was creating the space out of that shelving.
But that's funded also?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions?
Thank you. If nobody else in the queue, I will add, I just got a note from Emily LaPelle, who staffs our safety committee, that the CAHOOTS program, which was talked about before, will be coming before safety in October. So we'll get more information on that there. Thank you very much, Sheriff Kerman, for your presentation, for your service. And Director Riggs, any closing comments?
No, thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you to the entire safety team. Thank you to my colleagues. And we'll adjourn this meeting. We'll be back at 1 o'clock with planning and development at the National Western Center and NBCC. Full afternoon.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll leave the video stream running for a couple more minutes. Background info.
Turn off the on-air light. They gotta move way closer.
And that's the end of the smoozing, folks. Well, thank you again, Candy C. DeBucca. What an angel. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining me. I'm sure you'll find something on again soon.